I would really love to support people in starting programs like this in their communities as much as I can, because I didn't know what I was doing when I started, but now I'm a little bit of an expert in the process. I don't know all the things, but I know what works and I know what doesn't work, and I know what's important, and I've seen it work. It's working. I'm not at school anymore, but they're serving almost 100 scholars now. And through the 5th grade, and the plan is to expand it all the way to the 8th grade. That's amazing. And the United Way told us that if we have a family at our school for more than a year and they don't have housing by the end of that year, our community has doubly let them down. And so we partnered with the United Way to fund, and we decided from the beginning that if a family gets housing, the kids can still stay at the school, because, as we said, their housing is very precarious. Kids need the stability, and so they stay at the school. So, it's never going to be a huge program, because that sort of defeats the purpose of being able to offer this. So we need more of them, and I would love to see people find the courage to really make this movement a reality in their communities.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have my fire on because it's November. It's November. Wow, when I'm recording this, and I'm trying to stay warm, but my guest is somewhere even warmer, and that's great. Kate's here on the podcast, going to be talking about her book and lots of great things from her journey as an author. It's another great book for everyone to fall in love with, and I'm excited to have Kate here on the show. Kate, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so tell everybody, Kate, where are you in this big world of ours?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia, where it is 68 degrees and sunny and not a cloud in the sky. So, it's not always like that
terrible.
Here. Today is just one of those days.
Beautiful. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about your background. How did this all start for you to become an author? What was that spark for you that kind of said, you know what? I want to be an author and I want to share my stories with the world.
I've always loved writing. I started my career as a television writer for television and at Turner Broadcasting, and just really enjoyed writing, but didn't do it except for some television stuff I didn't do it professionally until just recently, really. I would write little things for, here and there, but nothing that was really big or exciting. But then I started a school, which we'll talk about, for children in Atlanta who are homeless. And it was a very complicated, exciting, rewarding journey. And I just felt compelled to write the story down. And I started writing, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, this could be a book. And then it was. And so there you go. So now I've really, the floodgates have opened, and I've been doing a lot more writing. I'm going to start working on another book coming up soon. So it's really been a great journey.
Okay. So what is the spark for you to say, I see a need in my community, I'm seeing homelessness, and I want to be a part of the solution? Like, so many people might see something like that and just kind of carry on with their day and go, not much I can do. But you had some desire to make a change. So what was that kind of brought that to light for you?
I've always been drawn to people and to people's hearts, and I like to know people's stories. I grew up in a very, very privileged community, and everybody looked like me. Everybody was the same socioeconomic status as me. And as I got out into the wider world, I realized that that's not the way it is. And in so many ways, our systems are set up that you just, the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps it's not really a thing. You got to have people out there that are supporting you and rooting for you and helping you find opportunities and kind of leveling the playing field. And so I had worked in the homeless serving arena for some time in Atlanta as a volunteer on several boards and then several organizations. And I was also a stay-at-home mom, and I have 4 kids. And one of my children has a very significant learning disability. And the idea of, or the process of ushering him through the school system was overwhelming. I had all the resources, all the money, all the, connections, and still I feared every day that he was going to fall through the cracks. And I was advocating for him every day. And so those two worlds collided when I started noticing all the moms coming in to get assistance who didn't have housing, who had little kids with them. And I just thought, how in the world? How do they do this? I just truly felt this connection with them. And so I just kind of started taking steps. I didn't mean to start a school. I didn't want to start a school. That seemed like a lot of work. I didn't know anything about education, but I couldn't let it go. And so one step after another step, and I back up and turn around and start again. And before you know it, we had this tuition-free private school in downtown Atlanta that was serving kids without housing. And it was really a beautiful thing.
Any stories that you can share, like, anonymously, obviously, but anything you can share with the listeners about maybe someone who's come through the school that maybe really sticks out to you in the moment, a story that we could share with them?
Oh yeah, there are so many, and so the book that I wrote, Once Upon a School, is a chronicle of how I started the school from start to finish, and then just I ended up leaving the school, and it's still in existence, but I'm not there anymore. So the second half of the book is kind of my journey of coming through that. But I share in the first half of the book so many stories about so many of our, we call them young scholars. And, there's one in particular that I think about a lot. She had a younger sibling. It was two little girls, and their parents were, and this is very much not the stereotype of what you would think of people without housing, but it's very real. Their parents both worked. Two married parents, but they didn't make enough money to find regular housing. And so they were living in a shelter. So the mom worked the day shift at the airport. She was a baggage handler at the airport. The father worked the overnight shift at a fast food restaurant. So we have a public transportation system. At 2 a.m, the mom would wake the little girls up, put them on our public transit to go to the station to meet their dad, who was getting off of work. And she would hand the girls over to their dad, and then she would get on the train and head to the airport for her job. Well, once you leave your shelter in the morning, you can't get back in until that evening. So the dad would just wander the streets with the little girls, and until it was time for him to drop the older one off at school. She came to our school. She was so weak when she came to school. She was hungry. She was tired. And she had no muscle tone. There was something truly wrong with her that we couldn't figure out. We thought she might have autism or something. It turns out that she was hungry, she was tired, and she needed glasses. We got her glasses. We provided some services for her family. We became kind of a support system with them. They have their own housing now. They both have moved on to more sustainable incomes. And their daughters are just thriving. They're still at the school, both of them, and they're truly thriving.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, as we talk about this, Kate, like how many people we walk by, brush shoulders with, stand next to in line, who are in that similar situation, but nobody knows. Maybe they don't tell people, or you just don't assume that maybe they're struggling in that way.
Right.
And I just wonder how many people we come into contact daily, and we have no idea what their story is. The idea of a dad and kids walking around from 2 a.m. till school time, I can't even picture that.
And I said to him all the time, when do you sleep? When do you sleep? And he said, I just really don't. And it's just heartbreaking. I read, in fact, just this morning in the New York Times, I read that there are 146,000 children in New York City that are in the school system that don't have any housing. And most of them, nobody has any idea, because their families. And, it's not just the lone people on the street that you think of. There's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of families that are just really doing the best they can. I can't tell you how many families I talked to that got an apartment. They were all great, but it was very cheap apartment because it was what they could afford. And the landlords don't keep up with them. And so the building gets condemned and they get kicked out and they have nowhere to go. And so then they're just on the streets. And, the public school system does an amazing job, but it is really difficult. And public school administrators have told me this. It is really difficult for the public school system to deal with the type of need that children who don't have housing are dealing with. Hunger, exhaustion, they come in with very low language skills because oftentimes their parents don't read and weren't able to read to them. And so they come in really behind and they never catch up.
I think when we hear the topic of homelessness, we think of adults being homeless. I don't think that's common for people to put children in that context of being homeless.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just write people without housing off as being, into drugs or mental illness, and so many of them are. I don't know what comes first, the homelessness or the mental illness and the drug abuse. But there's also a lot of families out there just doing the best they can with nowhere to go. And like I said, the idea that they could just figure it out and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, if you've got kids and, you don't have an education, it's just hard to get anything done. And these parents, they love their kids and they really want the best for them. When I asked them what they want, they say, I want my kid to grow up and to, we said, we want them to write their own stories of success. And that requires, first off, an education. And so that's what we're hoping we can inspire with our school.
The power of having a home, whatever that looks like for families, there's so much tied into home and having that space, right? Security, safety, memories, having your own bed to sleep in, like all those things we all take for granted. This is like, that's normal to have these things. To hear that young family with both parents working as hard as they can to make things ends meet and still struggling, it's sad for me to think that we don't have that kind of vision to what's going on in our communities. So the fact that you had this spark then to start a school, how did you know how to do that? Like, I would love to start a school, but I would have no idea where to start.
I really had no idea either. I really didn't. And so what I'm really good at is collaboration and reaching out to people that do know. And so I began by just talking to people. I talked to school administrators. I talked to the funders in our community. I talked to families who didn't have housing. I had a beautiful focus group with a whole room full of moms and dads who wanted to figure out how to get a better way for their child. And so we just took all of that information and we put it together. And then we had several real passionate expert educators come and advise. And, we made a lot of mistakes. And we did, you don't know what you don't know, but slowly the school has grown into a tremendous asset to our community that people really respect. We partner with the public school system here. They refer students to us all the time because we're small and we're specialized. We can take care of them. And so it was really more me seeing this need, and I'm really my talent is that I get stuff done. That's like my superpower. I get stuff done. And so how am I going to get this done? I'm going to have to find people that really know what they're doing. And I'm going to have to pull them together and we're going to have to figure it out. And people said it couldn't be done. And I write about this in the book, and I think it's really important. Because I had stayed home with my children for 20 years, a lot of people were like, oh, you're in over your head. Give up. Waste of time, waste of money. I'm not going to give you any money. You don't know what you're doing. And I almost quit several times, but it was always those kids that kept me coming back. Because if I didn't do it, nobody else was standing in line to do it. And so it happened. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears for sure.
There's a story, Kate, that somebody told me a long time ago, and as you're talking, it just came back to me again. But it really kind of supports what you're doing, what you're saying here on the podcast. The story basically is if you can picture the ocean, the beach, and what had happened is the tide came in and washed all of these starfish onto the beach, and then went back out and stranded all these starfish on the beach. And there's a little boy walking along, picking up starfish and just chucking them back in the ocean one at a time. But there's starfish everywhere. Everywhere you go, every time you take a step, there's another starfish. So he's just throwing these in one at a time. And an older man walks up to him and asks him what he's doing. The boy tells him. And the older man says, listen, there's so many starfish on this beach. There's no way what you're doing is going to make a difference. You can't save them all. You're not having an impact. It doesn't matter. So why are you doing this? And the boy picked up the next starfish and said, well, it matters to this one. And he threw it into the water. And I'm like, that's the story that I love what you're doing, that there's probably people who came to you, Kate, and said, there's such a big need. There's no way you're going to have an impact. So why even bother? Mm-hmm. Right? But yes. You're like, no, it matters to this one. And I'm going to do this and follow through on this idea. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely matters. And, people did say that. They said, well, there's too many kids. There's just too many kids. And you're not helping all the kids. And some of the kids are going to come and then they're going to drop out. And the parents aren't going to care. And I'm like, well, we can only do what we can do. And there's a beautiful story in the book of a family that I have become particularly close to. They have twins that started with us when they were in pre-K. We started with just a pre-K class, and we had only 11 scholars in our class. And the majority of those 11 scholars are still at the school. They're in the 5th grade now. And these two twins in particular, they come from a family. The parents are not educated, just fell through the cracks of the school system. They have 7 older siblings. There's 9 children in all. It's a married family, a married couple and a family. And the 7 older children are really struggling. And these two twins are doing well. And nobody in their family has ever been to college. They're talking, and these kids are now talking about, like, what middle school are they going to go to? And there's a middle school that would like to take all the kids from our school and serve them. And they serve this population. And then and they're just a high school. And they get kids into college. And they find ways to pay for it. So all of a sudden, these children are talking about going to college. And that's thrilling to me. I asked them if I could tell their story in the book. And I used pseudonyms. And then I went and I sat on their front porch one day. They do have a house now. And I sat on their front porch one day and I read them the chapter, even though it had pseudonyms in it, because the parents don't read. And they were like, could you please use our name? Because nobody's ever told our story. And I want we're proud for people to know that this is what's happening. And it was so amazing. They came to the book launch party. And they were so excited to be there, and so it's been a real journey, and I can't wait to see where those twins go.
So you're surprised about a book that you wrote. In the process of writing, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I got a book here." For the people that are going to buy the book as a reader, and they have a copy of your book, Kate, they're going to open it for the first time. It just arrived, but they haven't read a word yet. What is your love letter to them? What do you want them to know about this book? Why is this book so important for them to sit down and read this?
I say, and I don't say this about myself very often, I'm very proud of the way that this book turned out and the opportunity that I hope that it will offer for people to do some real soul searching, give them some real education on not only privilege and purpose, but also children and education. And so there's several different things. I mean, I truly chronicle from the beginning to the end what it took to start something new that everybody in the community said it couldn't be done. And so there's a lot there that I think people can take from that, of finding their call and finding their purpose. It talks a lot about the real stories of people without housing, families without housing. Like you were saying, people don't know this. It's a real problem, and we call it hidden homelessness, because it's not what you see on the streets. It's not what you see on the news, but it's heartbreaking that a community would let its young children just fall through the cracks of a system, and it's like we just throw them away so often because just by neglect, we don't do anything. So there's a lot of that in there, and then there's also I started writing the book because I left the school, and situations are complicated, people are complicated. It was a truly a shattering moment for me when I had to leave the school, and it was my choice, but it wasn't my choice. And I talk a lot about that in the book, and then afterwards, how I healed from that, because I was really grieving the loss of this program that I had built from scratch. And so you can learn a lot about, I think, resilience and trusting yourself and figuring out who you are. I didn't start this journey so I could run a school day to day, because I'm telling you, that is not work for me. I did it, but it is not work for me. I don't know enough about it. I started the school because I wanted to start a movement. And I'm now working with a couple of different groups around the United States who want to start similar programs in their communities. And it was through those people reaching out and starting to tell them the story that I realized that I didn't need to be so sad about it, because good things had happened and I needed to get it down on paper. And so I did.
And this is something that another community can replicate. They can copy the kind of how you did it, put it into their community, and kind of use it as a framework, right?
We've created like basically, here's a step-by-step of what you can do. And here are the things. I'm working with this one group in Pittsburgh who's starting a similar school up there. And they were doing a kind of a fair for people to come who didn't have housing. They were going to give them, snacks and like just come and then talk to them about the school. And they put up, flyers and posters, and they went to all the shelters. And I said to them, we did that. And the first 3 times we did it, nobody came. But I almost gave up, but we just kept at it. And then all of a sudden, there were people there. And the day after their first one, they said, I'm so glad you told us that, because nobody came. And so, and now they're building and rolling along too.
So what about families that are dealing with that lack of housing, lack of stability? There's a stigma, I think, that is not fair, that people who don't understand people who don't have a home just will say things that are quite mean, or maybe short-sighted, like just work harder, get an education, like try, like you just pull up your bootstraps and you make it work. Like, you can do this. You don't need help from us. You can do it on your own. You should be able to provide for your family. And that would be like really damning words for someone who's doing their best in life. And like you said, like the landlord lets the house fall apart or the apartment fall apart and they have to leave because it's not safe to live there anymore. That's not their fault.
Right.
That's what's happened to them, right? These people are working so hard to provide for their family, but it's just not working. So in that, how do we as community members then, from your understanding of how you've done what you've done, how can we be better and be more aware of those in our community, and what can we do to help?
Well, I think the first thing is really sharing stories with each other, getting to know people. If you know someone, you can better understand where they're coming from and what their challenges are, and see their dignity and their worth. If you're just watching people on the news or, so you just really can't do that. So there's a lot of opportunities, volunteering different places where you can find yourself in conversation with people who are really struggling, and you hear their stories and you just think, this is not right. And for me, education is the number one thing that we can do to help end this cycle. Because a lot of times the parents can't get a job to sustain their family because they didn't graduate from high school, or they don't have any skills. They don't have anything else that they can, there's just not a lot of upside opportunity for them. And we can say things like, well, you should be able to earn a wage to support a family in a fast food restaurant. Maybe, but maybe what we should do is some education. So you have choices and you can do some different things. And so that's why I decided to focus on the kids and the education. Because if they can keep the doors open, they can have all kinds of opportunities that they wouldn't have had that can help them break their cycle of generational poverty.
So you talk about in the book that there was a change for you, though, that happened at the school, and now you're no longer there. Can you give us any kind of insight to what the change was and how this kind of came to be? Because it really feels like this was a sense of identity for you. This was a sense of giving back to your community.
Uh-huh.
And now you're not there in the same way. So can you share a little bit with us? We're going to read the book, obviously, but can you give us a little bit?
People are complicated. And I think that it was the perfect storm of COVID. We stayed open during COVID because how are we going to close? How are we going to ask children without housing to do online schooling? That's just not really that's not really a thing. And I'm very proud of the fact that that we did keep going to school, and we only had to close for 1 week because somebody got COVID. And our kids, although still way below, average grade level, their reading scores and their math scores went up during COVID. I mean, it's up. And so, but it was complicated because it was COVID, and I was in the building every day, but the board of directors was not in the building every day because, we just weren't. And there was a lot of racial tension in the world, and people were scared and people were stressed out, and several things happened that made me feel like I was not on the same page with the board of directors anymore about what needed to happen in the school and how people needed to be treated. And so I couldn't raise money for the organization anymore, which was, and so I stepped away. And I was gutted by it because it was my child, and it took me a long time to even be able to talk about it. But sharing my story in the book has been truly healing for me, and it's helped me to understand. I didn't do everything right, but I definitely didn't do that much wrong, and so this is a way I think that I can gift this program and this experience to other people that they can apply in lots of different ways across their life.
In the process of writing the book, how has Kate changed?
Oh, wow. One of my biggest mistakes at the school was that I didn't trust myself because I had stayed home with my kids for so long. And I let people who had more degrees than me, more experience than me, tell me that I didn't know what I was doing. And so I always felt like I kind of didn't know what I was doing. But I was actually doing it. So I did know what I was doing, but I just didn't trust myself enough. And I should have trusted myself more. And so I've learned to trust myself. I've learned how to set better boundaries for myself. And I've learned a lot about who I am. I mean, I'm very resilient, and I can bounce back. So that's, it's been good. It's been good stuff.
Tell us about some of the responses you've been getting from readers about the book. What have you heard back?
Oh, people are really amazed by the story. It's really been something that people are enjoying, all the different parts of it. I've had some wonderful conversation with groups of women about purpose and privilege and call, and which has been exciting. I've presented to a lot of educators the book, and they're just really excited about the idea of finding these partnerships and these new ways of educating children who are without housing, because we learned so much about the effects of trauma and how to deal with trauma, not just on a high level, from the clinical standpoint, but like down with, we are in it. We are with the kids, and here's what's happening, and here's what's working, and here's what's not. And so we learned a lot of lessons that I think a lot of educators have been really, really fascinated by and are using. So overall, people have been really, really positive about it. I will say the one thing that comes up every time I talk to people is the word sonder, which I introduced in the book. Everybody wants to talk more about that. And it was a word that was only coined back in the, I think in the early 2000s by a man who John Koenig, he wrote a whole book on, it's called the Book of Obscure Sorrows, where he created words that he felt like needed to exist to explain states of being that didn't exist. And somebody told me about his word sonder. And it means that everybody that you run into is living a life as colorful and complicated as you are. And it means that our lives connect and our stories connect in so many ways that we don't even know. The ripple effect, we're all so connected in our stories. They intertwine. You have no idea whose story you were a bit player in the background in that really made a difference, or who were bit players in your background. But it all comes together. And people have been truly just energized by that idea. It's been interesting.
And then, like we said earlier, like you don't realize who you're brushing shoulders with. But if we were all to be able to be kind to each other and be more aware of each other,
yes,
that ripple effect you talk about could be multiplied by so much more, right?
Yes. But, people, when you pass somebody without housing or, just kind of not on the street that doesn't look like you or whatever, people, they tend to think, either they think, oh, they're going to ask me for money, or, oh, I'm a little scared. And you look away because you don't want to engage. And I can't tell you how many people have told me that are living on the streets, I don't want money. I just want you to look me in the eye and say hello, because I'm a person. I'm having a really hard time, but I'm a person. And we can all do that. We can all do that.
Yeah. It's kind of that red car thing. It's kind of a thing. It's actually been proven that if you see something, like for me, when I bought my certain car that I bought, after I bought it, I saw that car everywhere. Yeah. Because it's like, now I'm aware of this thing. Before I bought the car, I didn't even know it existed. I never saw it. But as soon as I owned one, I'm like, I could pick it out anywhere. And it just seems like they come from every direction now. It's like, how come there's so many of these cars I never noticed?
Yes.
And I think that's the one thing we can do as community members, is to become more aware of people, because they're there and they don't want to be invisible.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know what to do with them. So we just ignore them, or we just go on with our lives and stay busy. But there's people sleeping in their cars at a Walmart parking lot tonight that have nothing. And here we are, with all of our stuff and all of our things and the safety and security of a house. Yeah.
And the newer phase of this is the number of people that are living in motels, extended stay motels, and paying $800, $1,500 a week. And I met families we had families at the school that were living in motels. And so what that means is if it's one or two parents and 2 or 3 kids, you typically have either 2 double beds or 1 king size bed. So you come home from school and you're just sitting there in your hotel room doing your homework. You have a mini fridge, which you can put stuff in, but you don't even want to cook anything. Like if you get, you all share in a bathroom and you're spending $1,500 a week. There's no path forward from that if you're working. Even if you're working. And so, I challenge people, when you make these broad statements about any issue that we talk about in our world, do you know somebody who's living that? What's their story? Because a lot of times if you start talking, that you realize that it's not as absolute as we like to want to make things.
Yeah, and like we said, there's people doing their very best with what they have, and they're like 1 or 2 paychecks away from possibly being
Oh, yeah.
homeless and having this be a reality for them. And that's scary
That
as a
is
parent.
scary.
You want to provide for your kids. You want to give safety and security. You want to take care of their medical needs, their nutritional needs. You want them to grow up in a safe and happy environment. And if you can't provide that,
There's some statistic, and these numbers are probably not right anymore, but it was something like 40% of our country could not sustain a $400 surprise expense.
right.
They would
Right.
lose everything. $400
Yeah.
surprise expense.
That's
And those happen all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
medical expense of, whatever, your car breaks down, and there you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is your big hope then? Now we talked about some other places possibly duplicating what you've done in different places across the U.S. What's your big hope now as you kind of look forward into the future? How do you take all the lessons learned from the school and working with these amazing families? Where are you? What path is that leading you down now?
I would really love to support people in starting programs like this in their communities as much as I can, because I didn't know what I was doing when I started, but now I'm a little bit of an expert in the process. I don't know all the things, but I know what works and I know what doesn't work, and I know what's important, and I've seen it work. It's working. I'm not at school anymore, but they're serving almost 100 scholars now. And through the 5th grade, and the plan is to expand it all the way to the 8th grade. That's amazing. And the United Way told us that if we have a family at our school for more than a year and they don't have housing by the end of that year, our community has doubly let them down. And so we partnered with the United Way to fund, and we decided from the beginning that if a family gets housing, the kids can still stay at the school, because, as we said, their housing is very precarious. Kids need the stability. And so they stay at the school. So, it's never going to be a huge program, because that sort of defeats the purpose of being able to offer this. So we need more of them. And I would love to see people find the courage to really make this movement a reality in their communities. So there's information in the book on how to get in touch with me.
Good. So, Kate, somebody's listening to this conversation and they're thinking, I want to do what Kate did. I don't know if I have what it takes. Talk to them, Kate. Like, they're sitting here with you right now. They're like, Kate, I want to do this where I live, but I just don't feel like I have all the ability to do this. I don't know anything about this. I don't have connections. I have nothing, but I want to make a change in my community. What do you say to them?
I didn't know anything either. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't know what I was doing, and it seemed like too big of a job for me. But I think it all comes down to just respecting the worth and dignity of people, and that was my driving force. We can't let these people just fall through the cracks. They're people too, and they need somebody. They need their community to support them, and so more than anything, I was that person that stood up in the community and said, okay, who's going to help me do this? Because it has to be done. And no, it's not easy, but I didn't come into this with any skills to do it, except for I get stuff done. The groups that I'm working with did not come into it with any skills to do this, but the rewards are tremendous, because it truly makes an impact in our world. And most importantly, in the lives of these kids who we always said we want to help them see beyond circumstance, so they can write, beyond their circumstances, so they can write their own story of success. And so all you have to do that is the ability to be with people and to respect people's dignity, and to wanna to imagine a world that's different.
It's amazing. I love it. So, Kate, tell us where we can get the book. I see I have your Amazon page up while we're chatting, but tell us where we can get the book. And also, I'm sure there's going to be people who want to reach out to you as we've talked through this conversation. They're like, Kate, if I could get some time with you, I've got so many questions.
Yes.
I want to do this in my community and I want to talk to you more. Where do we go to get the book, and how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can get the book at all the online places, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's called Once Upon a School. There's also are you familiar with bookshop.org?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love bookshop.org. For people who don't know, they support the independent booksellers. So you can order it on there and you can say which independent bookseller you'd like the money to go to.
Nice.
So I think that's a beautiful way to do it. My website is in the book, KateKennedyWrites.com. And on my website, there is a button where you can email me. You can get in touch with me. And I would love to talk to anybody. I'm very passionate about this. I don't do it. I don't do it to make money or to, I'm not, it's not going to make me rich or anything like that. I just am passionate about people knowing, and taking care of our kids.
Okay. So Kate, as we wrap up, I want you to talk to the parent who is struggling with providing a home for their kids. They hear your story and about the book, and they're like, "Oh, I wish you were in my community, Kate. I wish you were here. Oh, I would send my kids to you in a heartbeat." But they're really struggling. They're trying their best. They feel like they're up against the wall. They're not getting the support they want from their community and they need. If you can imagine them at the school, the beginning of school day starting, and the kids are getting ready for class and everything, if you could walk up to that parent and just wrap your arms around them and give them some words of encouragement today as we close off, what would you say to that parent they've done everything they possibly can and they're almost out of fuel? They're just like, I just don't know what to do next. Wrap your arms around them, Kate. What are you going to say to that parent as we close off?
Oh gosh, I would tell them that they are loved first off, and I know that sounds trite and it's not very helpful when you don't know what you're going to eat. And then because I'm a fixer and a doer, I would say to them, let's figure this out together. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. Let's reach out to some agencies, some services, let's do that, because there's help out there. And, maybe that someone who's really struggling can be the one to inspire somebody to start a program like this, because that could happen. And so I'd say we're in this together. Let's do it.
It's picking up another starfish and throwing it back in the ocean. Right?
That's right.
One at a time.
That's right. Yeah.
The need is big, but if we ignore the need and don't act, nothing's going to get solved.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one child, one starfish, one child. That's important.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great. Everyone, the book Once Upon a School, a story of dreaming big, falling hard, and bouncing back is available. It came out in September. Of this year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Everyone go buy a copy of the book. Don't buy one, buy two. Buy one for yourself and one for someone else that you think could change the world.
Thank you.
And make sure that they read this book. And when you buy the book, everyone listening, leave a great review as well.
Yes.
That tells many people that are looking at this book, deciding whether this is the right book for them. Your review helps. So
yes, it does.
Help Kate. Write out a great review for Kate's book.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love it. Kate, thank you so much for writing the book. Thank you for pouring your life into your community and for changing the lives of these kids by a simple act of saying, even though I don't think I have everything I need to get this done, I'm going to do it anyway. And we need more people like you, Kate, in this world. So I'm excited to see what's next for you as you use the name of my show, live your next chapter. I'm excited to see what's coming next for you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for helping me share my story. I really appreciate it. It's been great conversation.
Excellent. Everyone, all the information is always in the show notes. Make sure you go there and check all the links. I have a link to Kate's website as well. Go over there and let her know you heard her on the podcast. And please, again, go buy the book, buy 2 copies, and let's help Kate reach more people. Kate, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun, Well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote with your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.